Welcome to Top 100 Most Famous Poems of English Literature. Number 70.
Love's Secret. By William Blake. Never seek to tell thy love, love that never told can be, for the gentle wind doth move silently, invisibly.
I told my love, I told my love, I told her all my heart, trembling cold, in ghastly fears.
Ah, she did depart. Soon after she was gone from me, a traveler came by, silently, invisibly, he took her with a sigh.
Number 69.
Auguries of Innocence. By William Blake. To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. A robin redbreast in a cage puts all heaven in a rage. A dove house filled with doves and pigeon shutters hell through all its regions. A dog starved at his master's gate predicts the ruin of the state. A horse misused upon the road calls to heaven for human blood.
Each outcry of the hunted hare a fiber from the brain does tear.
A skylark wounded in the wing,
a cherubim does cease to sing.
The gamecock clipped and armed for fight does the rising sun affright. Every wolf's and lion's howl raises from hell a human soul. The wild deer wandering here and there keeps the human soul from care. The lamb misused breeds public strife, and yet forgives the butcher's knife.
The bat that flits at close of eve has left the brain that won't believe.
The owl that calls upon the night speaks the unbeliever's fright. He who shall hurt the little wren shall never be beloved by men.
He who the ox to wrath has moved shall never be by woman loved.
The one and boy that kills the fly shall feel the spider's enmity. He who torments the chafer's sprite weaves a bower in endless night. The caterpillar on the leaf repeats to thee thy mother's grief. Kill not the moth nor butterfly, for the last judgment draweth nigh. He who shall train the horse to war shall never pass the polar bar. The beggar's dog and widow's cat, feed them and thou wilt grow fat. The gnat that sings his summer song poison gets from slander's tongue. The poison of the snake and newt is the sweat of envy's foot.
The poison of the honeybee is the artist's jealousy.
The prince's robes and beggar's rags are toadstools on the miser's bags. A truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent.
It is right it should be so, man was made for joy and woe, and when this we rightly know, through the world we safely go.
Joy and woe are woven fine, a clothing for the soul divine.
Under every grief and pine runs a joy with silken twine.
The babe is more than swaddling bands, throughout all these human lands tools were made, and born were hands, every farmer understands. Every tear from every eye becomes a babe in eternity, this is caught by females bright, and returned to its own delight. The bleat, the bark, bellow, and roar, are waves that beat on heaven's shore. The babe that weeps the rod beneath writes revenge in realms of death. The beggar's rags, fluttering in air, just to rags the heavens tear.
The soldier, armed with sword and gun, palsied strikes the summer sun.
The poor man's farthing is worth more than all the gold on Afric's shore.
One mite wrung from the laborer's hand shall buy and sell the miser's lands, or, if protected from on high, does that whole nation sell and buy.
He who mocks the infant's faith shall be mocked in age and death. He who shall teach the child to doubt the rotting grave shall ne'er get out. He who respects the infant's faith triumphs over hell and death.
The child's toys and the old man's reasons are the fruits of the two seasons.
The questioner who sits so sly shall never know how to reply. He who replies to words of doubt doth put the light of knowledge out. The strongest poison ever known came from Caesar's laurel crown.
Naught can deform the human race like to the armor's iron brace.
When golden gems adorn the plow, to peaceful art shall envy bow. A riddle, or the cricket's cry, is to doubt a fit reply. The emmet's inch and eagle's mile make lame philosophy to smile. He who doubts from what he sees will ne'er believe. Do what you please.
If the sun and moon should doubt, they'd immediately go out.
To be in a passion you good may do, but no good if a passion is in you.
The whore and gambler, by the state licensed, build that nation's fate.
The harlot's cry from street to street shall weave old England's winding sheet. The winner's shout, the loser's curse, dance before dead England's hearse.
Every night and every morn some to misery are born. Every morn and every night some are born to sweet delight.
Some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to endless night. We are led to believe a lie when we see not through the eye, which was born in a night to perish in a night, when the soul slept in beams of light. God appears, and God is light, to those poor souls who dwell in night, but does a human form display to those who dwell in realms of day. If you liked our selection, and want to develop your intellectual skills, or just to relax, please subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/AI-Readers, and follow us to listen quality poems written by the most famous poets of English literature and read by the most advanced artificial intelligence software. Thank you. Number 68. I Have a Rendezvous with Death. By Allan Seeger. I have a rendezvous with death at some disputed barricade when spring comes back with rustling shade and apple blossoms fill the air. I have a rendezvous with death when spring brings back blue days and fair. It may be he shall take my hand and lead me into his dark land and close my eyes and quench my breath. It may be I shall pass him, still I have a rendezvous with death on some scarred slope of battered hill. When spring comes round again this year and the first meadow flowers appear. God knows 'twere better to be deep pillowed in silk and scented down, where love throbs out in blissful sleep, pulse nigh to pulse and breath to breath, where hushed awakenings are dear. But I've a rendezvous with death at midnight in some flaming town, when spring trips north again this year, and I to my pledged word am true. I shall not fail that rendezvous. Number 67. To Autumn. By John Keats. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd, and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more, later flowers for the bees until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath, and all its twined flowers, and sometimes like a gleaner thou dost keep steady, thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press, with patient look, thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too, while barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies, and full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. Number 66. My life had stood, a loaded gun. By Emily Dickinson. My life had stood, a loaded gun in corners, till a day the owner passed, identified and carried me away. And now we roam in sovereign woods, and now we hunt the doe, and every time I speak for him the mountains straight reply. And do I smile, such cordial light upon the valley glow, it is as a Vesuvian face had let its pleasure through. And when at night our good day done I guard my master's head, 'tis better than the eider duck's deep pillow, to have shared. To foe of his, I'm deadly foe, none stir the second time on whom I lay a yellow eye or an emphatic thumb. Though I than he, may longer live he longer must, than I, for I have but the power to kill, without the power to die. Number 65. A Valentine. By Edgar Allan Poe. For her this rhyme is penned, whose luminous eyes, brightly expressive as the twins of Loda, shall find her own sweet name that nestling lies upon the page, enwrapped from every reader. Search narrowly the lines. They hold a treasure divine, a talisman, an amulet that must be worn at heart. Search well the measure, the words, the syllables. Do not forget the trivialest point, or you may lose your labor. And yet there is in this no Gordian knot, which one might not undo without a saber, if one could merely comprehend the plot. And written upon the leaf where now are peering eyes scintillating soul, there lie perdu three eloquent words oft uttered in the hearing of poets, by poets, as the name is a poet's too. Its letters, although naturally lying like the night Pinto, Mendez Ferdinando, still form a synonym for truth. Cease trying. You will not read the riddle, though you do the best you can do. Number 64. Snowbound, a Winter Idyl. By John Greenleaf Whittier. Announced by all the trumpets of the sky, arrives the snow, and driving o'er the fields seems nowhere to alight. The whited air hides hills and woods, river and the heaven, and veils the farmhouse at the garden's end. The sled and traveler stopped, the courier's feet delayed, all friends shut out. The housemates sit around the radiant fireplace, enclosed in a tumultuous privacy of storm. Emerson, the snowstorm. The sun that brief December day rose cheerless over hills of gray, and darkly circled, gave at noon a sadder light than waning moon. Slow tracing down the thickening sky its mute and ominous prophecy, a portent seeming less than threat, it sank from sight before it set. A chill no coat, however stout, of homespun stuff could quite shut out a hard, dull bitterness of cold that checked, mid vein, the circling race of lifeblood in the sharpened face. The coming of the snowstorm told. The wind blew east, we heard the roar of ocean on his wintry shore, and felt the strong pulse throbbing their beat with low rhythm our inland air. Meanwhile we did our nightly chores, brought in the wood from out of doors, littered the stalls, and from the mouths raked down the herd's grass for the cows, heard the horse whinnying for his corn, and, sharply clashing horn on horn, impatient down the stanchion rose the cattle shake their walnut bows, while, peering from his early perch upon the scaffold's pole of birch, the cock his crested helmet bent and down his querulous challenge sent.
Unwarmed by any sunset light, the gray day darkened into night, a night made hoary with the swarm and whirl dance of the blinding storm, as zigzagged, wavering to and fro, crossed and recrossed the winged snow, and ere the early bedtime came the white drift piled the window frame, and through the glass the clothesline posts looked in like tall and sheeted ghosts. So all night long the storm roared on, the morning broke without a sun, in tiny spheral trace with lines of nature's geometric signs and starry flake and pellicle. All day the hoary meteor fell, and when the second morning shone, we looked upon a world unknown, on nothing we could call our own. Around the glistening wonder bent the blue walls of the firmament, no cloud above, no earth below, a universe of sky and snow. The old familiar sights of ours took marvelous shapes. Strange domes and towers rose up where sty or corn crib stood, or garden wall, or belt of wood. A smooth white mound the brush pile showed. A fenceless drift what once was road, the bridle post an old man sat with loose flung coat and high cocked hat. The well curb had a Chinese roof, and even the long sweep, high aloof, in its slant splendor, seemed to tell of Pisa's leaning miracle. A prompt, decisive man, no breath our father wasted, was a path. Well pleased, for when did farmer boy count such a summons less than joy? Our buskins on our feet we drew, with mittened hands, and caps drawn low, to guard our necks and ears from snow, we cut the solid whiteness through. And, where the drift was deepest, made a tunnel walled and overlaid with dazzling crystal. We had read of rare Aladdin's wondrous cave, and to our own his name we gave, with many a wish the luck were ours to test his lamp's supernal powers. We reached the barn with merry din, and roused the prisoned brutes within. The old horse thrust his long head out, and grave with wonder gazed about. The cock his lusty greeting said, and forth his speckled harem led. The oxen lashed their tails, and hooked, and mild reproach of hunger looked. The horned patriarch of the sheep, like Egypt's moon roused from sleep, shook his sage head with gesture mute, and emphasized with stamp of foot. All day the gusty north wind bore the loosening drift its breath before, low circling round its southern zone, the sun through dazzling snow mist shone. No church bell lent its Christian tone to the savage air, no social smoke curled over woods of snow-hung oak. A solitude made more intense by dreary voiced elements, the shrieking of the mindless wind, the moaning tree boughs swaying blind, and on the glass the unmeaning beat of ghostly fingertips of sleep.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Beyond
to our
the circle
channel.
of our hearth no welcome sound of toil or mirth unbound the spell, and testified of human life and thought outside. We minded that the sharpest ear the buried brooklet could not hear, the music of whose liquid lip had been to us companionship, and, in our lonely life, had grown to have an almost human tone. As night drew on, and, from the crest of wooded knolls that ridged the west, the sun, a snow-blown traveler, sank from sight beneath the smothering bank. We piled, with care, our nightly stack of wood against the chimney back, the oaken log, green, huge, and thick, and on its top the stout back stick, the knotty forestick laid apart, and filled between with curious art the ragged brush. Then, hovering near, we watched the first red blaze appear, heard the sharp crackle, caught the gleam on whitewashed wall and sagging beam, until the old, rude furnished room burst, flower-like, into rosy bloom, while radiant with a mimic flame outside the sparkling drift became. And through the bare-boughed lilac tree our own warm hearth seemed blazing free. The crane and pendant tremble showed, the Turks' heads on the andirons glowed, while childish fancy, prompt to tell the meaning of the miracle, whispered the old rhyme, under the tree, when fire outdoors burns merrily, there the witches are making tea. The moon above the eastern wood shone at its full, the hill range stood transfigured in the silver flood, its blown snows flashing cold and keen, dead white, save where some sharp ravine took shadow, or the somber green of hemlocks turned to pitchy black against the whiteness at their back. For such a world and such a night most fitting, that unwarming light, which only seemed where it fell to make the coldness visible. Shut in from all the world without, we sat the clean-winged hearth about, content to let the north wind roar in baffled rage at pane and door, while the red logs before us beat the frost line back with tropic heat, and ever, when a louder blast shook beam and rafter as it passed, the merrier up its roaring draught the great throat of the chimney laughed. The house dog on his paws outspread laid to the fire his drowsy head, the cat's dark silhouette on the wall a couchant tiger seemed to fall. And, for the winter fireside meat, between the andirons straddling feet, the mug of cider simmered slow, the apples sputtered in a row, and, close at hand, the basket stood with nuts from brown October's wood. What matter how the night behaved?
What matter how the north wind rave?
Blow high, blow low, not all its snow could quench our hearth-fire's ruddy glow.
Oh, time and change.
With hair as gray as was my sire's that winter day, how strange it seems, with so much gone of life and love, to still live on. Ah, brother,
Only I and thou are left of all that circle now, the dear home faces whereupon that fitful firelight paled and shone.
henceforward, listen as we will, the voices of that hearth are stilled, where we may the wide earth o'er, those lighted faces smile no more. We tread the paths their feet have worn, we sit beneath their orchard trees, we hear, like them, the hum of bees and rustle of the bladed corn. We turn the pages that they read, their written words we linger o'er, but in the sun they cast no shade, no voice is heard. No sign is made, no step is on the conscious floor. Yet love will dream, and faith will trust, since he who knows our need is just, that somehow somewhere meet we must. Alas for him who never sees the stars shine through his cypress trees, who, hopeless, lays his dead away, nor looks to see the breaking day across the mournful marbles play, who hath not learned, in hours of faith, the truth to flesh and sense unknown, that life is ever lord of death, and love can never lose its own. We sped the time with stories old, wrought puzzles out, and riddles told, or stammered from our schoolbook lore the chief of Gambia's golden shore. How often since, when all the land was clay and slavery shaping hand, as if a far-blown trumpet stirred the languorous and sick air, I heard, does not the voice of reason cry, claim the first right which nature gave, from the red scourge of bondage to fly, nor deign to live a burdened slave. Our father rode again his ride on Memphrey Magog's wooded side, sat down again to moose and samp in trapper's hut and Indian camp, lived where the old idyllic ease beneath street Francois hemlock trees. Again for him the moonlight shone on Norman cap and bodice zone. Again he heard the violin play which led the village dance away, and mingled in its merry whirl the grandame and the laughing girl. Or, nearer home, our steps he led where Salisbury's level marshes spread mile wide as flies the laden bee, where merry mowers, hale and strong, swept, scythe on scythe, their swaths along the low green prairies of the sea. We shared the fishing off Boar's Head, and round the rocky isles of shoals the hake broil on the driftwood coals, the chowder on the sand beach made, dipped by the hungry, steaming hot, with spoons of clamshell from the pot. We heard the tales of witchcraft old, and dream and sign and marvel told to sleepy listeners as they lay stretched idly on the salted hay adrift along the winding shores, when favoring breezes deigned to blow the square sail of the gondolo and idle lay the useless oars. Our mother, while she turned her wheel or run the new knit stocking heel, told how the Indian hordes came down at midnight on Conchaco town, and how her own great uncle bore his cruel scalp marked to fourscore.
Recalling in her fitting phrase, so rich and picturesque and free, the common unrhymed poetry of simple life and country ways, the story of her early days, she made us welcome to her home, old hearths grew wide to give us room, we stole with her a frightened look at the grey wizard's conjuring book, the fame whereof went far and wide through all the simple countryside. We heard the hawks at twilight play, the boat horn on Piscataqua, the loon's weird laughter far away, we fished her little trout brook, knew what flowers in wood and meadow grew, what sunny hillsides autumn brown she climbed to shake the ripe nuts down, saw where in sheltered cove and bay, the duck's black squadron anchored lay, and heard the wild geese calling loud beneath the grey November cloud. Then, haply, with a look more grave, and soberer tone, some tale she gave from painful Sewell's ancient tome, beloved in every Quaker home, of faith fire winged by martyrdom, or Chowkley's journal, old and quaint, gentlest of skippers, rare sea saint, who, when the dreary calms prevailed, and water butt and bread cask failed, and cruel, hungry eyes pursued his portly presence mad for food, with dark hints muttered under breath of casting lots for life or death, offered, if heaven withheld supplies, to be himself the sacrifice. Then, suddenly, as if to save the good man from his living grave, a ripple on the water grew, a school of porpoise flashed in view. Take, eat, he said, and be content. These fishes in my stead are sent by him who gave the tangled ram to spare the child of Abraham. Our uncle, innocent of books, was rich in lore of fields and brooks, the ancient teachers never dumb of nature's unhoused lyceum. In moons and tides and weather wise, he read the clouds as prophecies, and foul or fair could well divine, by many an occult hint and sign, holding the cunning worded keys to all the woodcraft mysteries, himself to nature's heart so near that all her voices in his ear of beast or bird had meanings clear, like Apollonius of old, who knew the tales the sparrows told, or Hermes, who interpreted what the sage cranes of Nilus said, a simple, guileless, childlike man, content to live where life began, strong only on his native grounds, the little world of sights and sounds whose girdle was the parish bounds, whereof his fondly partial pride the common features magnified. As Surrey hills to mountains grew in white of Selborne's loving view, he told how teal and loon he shot,
and how the eagle's eggs he got, the feats on pond and river done, prodigies of rod and gun till warming with the tales he told. Forgotten was the outside cold, the bitter wind unheeded blew. From ripening corn the pigeons flew, the partridge drummed I the wood, the mink went fishing down the river brink. In fields with bean or clover gay, the woodchuck, like a hermit gray, peered from the doorway of his cell. The muskrat plied the mason's trade, and tier by tier his mud walls laid. And from the shagbark overhead the grizzled squirrel dropped his shell. Next, the dear ant, whose smile of cheer and voice in dreams I see and hear, the sweetest woman ever fate perverse denied a household mate, who, lonely, homeless, not the less found peace in love's unselfishness, and welcome wheresoe'er she went, a calm and gracious element, whose presence seemed the sweet income and womanly atmosphere of home. Called up her girlhood memories, the huskings and the apple bees, the sleigh rides and the summer sails, weaving through all the poor details and homespun warp of circumstance a golden woof thread of romance. For well she kept her genial mood and simple faith of maidenhood. Before her still a cloud land lay, the mirage loomed across her way, the morning dew, that dries so soon with others, glistened at her noon through years of toil and soil and care. From glossy tress to thin gray hair, all unprofaned she held apart the virgin fancies of the heart. Be shame to him of woman born who hath for such but thought of scorn. There too our elder sister plied her evening task to stand beside a full, rich nature, free to trust, truthful and almost sternly just, impulsive, earnest, prompt to act, and make her generous thought a fact, keeping with many a light disguise the secret of self-sacrifice. O heart sore tried, thou hast the best that heaven itself could give thee, rest from all bitter thoughts and things. How many a poor one's blessing went with thee beneath the low green tent whose curtain never outward swings. As one who held herself a part of all she saw and let her heart against the household bosom lean, upon the motley braided mat our youngest and our dearest sat, lifting her large, sweet, asking eyes, now bathed in the unfading green and holy peace of paradise. Oh, looking from some heavenly hill or from the shade of saintly palms, or silver reach of river calms, do those large eyes behold me still? With me one little year ago, the chill weight of the winter snow for months upon her grave has lain, and now, when summer south winds blow and briar and harebell bloom again, I tread the pleasant paths we trod, I see the violet sprinkled sod whereon she leaned. Too frail and weak the hillside flowers she loved to seek, yet following me where'er I went with dark eyes full of love's content. The birds are glad, the briar rose fills the air with sweetness, all the hills stretch green to June's unclouded sky, but still I wait with ear, not for something gone which should be nigh, a loss in all familiar things, in flower that blooms, and bird that sings. And yet, dear heart, remembering thee, am I not richer than of old? Safe in thy immortality, what change can reach the wealth I hold? What chance can mar the pearl and gold thy love hath left in trust with me? And while in life's late afternoon, where cool and long the shadows grow, I walk to meet the night that soon shall shape and shadow overflow, I cannot feel that thou art far, since near at need the angels are. And when the sunset gates unbar, shall I not see thee waiting stand, and white against the evening star, the welcome of thy beckoning hand? Brisk wielder of the birch and rule, the master of the district school held at the fire his favored place, its warm glow lit a laughing face fresh-hued and fair, where scarce appeared the uncertain prophecy of beard. He teased the mitten-blinded cat, played crosspins on my uncle's hat, sang songs, and told us what befalls in classic Dartmouth's college halls, or in the wild northern hills among, from whence his yeoman father wrung by patient toil subsistence scant, not competence and yet not want. He early gained the power to pay his cheerful self-reliant way, could doff at ease his scholar's gown to peddle wares from town to town, or through the long vacations reach in lonely lowland districts teach, where all the droll experience found at stranger hearths in boarding round, the moonlit skater's keen delight, the sleigh drive through the frosty night, the rustic party, with its rough accompaniment of blind man's buff, and whirling plate, and forfeits paid, his winter task of pastime made. Happy the snow-locked homes wherein he tuned his merry violin, or played the athlete in the barn, or held the good dame's winding yarn, or mirth-provoking versions told of classic legends rare and old, or in the scenes of Greece and Rome had all the commonplace of home, and little seemed at best the odds twixt Yankee peddlers and old gods, where Pindus-born Arachnus took the guise of any gristmill brook, and dread Olympus at his will became a huckleberry hill. A careless boy that night he seemed, but at his desk he had the look and air of one who wisely schemed, and hostage from the future took in trained thought and lore of book. Large-brained, clear-eyed, of such as he shall freedom's young apostles be, who, following in war's bloody trail, shall every lingering wrong assail, all chains from limb and spirit strike, uplift the black and white alike, scatter before their swift advance the darkness and the ignorance, the pride, the lust, the squalid sloth, which nurtured treason's monstrous growth, made murder pastime, and the hell of prison torture possible. The cruel lie of caste refute, old forms remold, and substitute for slavery's lash the freeman's will. For blind routine, wise-handed skill, a schoolhouse plan on every hill, stretching in radiate nerve lines, thence the quick wires of intelligence. Till north and south together broad shall own the same electric thought, in peace a common flag salute, and side by side in labor's free and unresentful rivalry, harvest the fields wherein they fought. Another guest that winter night flashed back from lustrous eyes the light. Unmarked by time, and yet not young, the honeyed music of her tongue and words of meekness scarcely told a nature passionate and bold, strong, self-concentred, spurning guide, its milder features dwarfed beside her unbent will's majestic pride. She sat among us at the best, a not unfeared, half-welcome guest, rebuking with her cultured phrase our homeliness of words and ways. A certain pard-like, treacherous grace swayed the lithe limbs and drooped the lash, lent the white teeth their dazzling flash, and under low brows, black with night, rayed out at times a dangerous light. The sharp heat lightnings of her face presaging ill to him whom fate condemned to share her love or hate. A woman tropical, intense in thought and act, in soul and sense, she blended in a like degree the vixen and the devotee, revealing with each freak or feint the temper of Petruchio's Kate, the raptures of Siena's saint. Her tapering hand and rounded wrist had facile power to form a fist. The warm, dark languish of her eyes was never safe from wrath's surprise. Brows saintly calm and lips devout knew every change of scowl and pout, and the sweet voice had notes more high and shrill for social battle cry. Since then what old cathedral town has missed her pilgrim staff and gown? What convent gate has held its lock against the challenge of her knock? Through Smyrna's plague-hushed thoroughfares, up sea-set Malta's rocky stairs, gray olive slopes of hills that hem thy tombs and shrines, Jerusalem, or startling on her desert throne the crazy queen of Lebanon with claims fantastic as her own. Her tireless feet have held their way, and still unrestful, bowed and gray, she watches under eastern skies, with hope each day renewed and fresh, the Lord's quick coming in the flesh, whereof she dreams and prophesies. Where'er her troubled path may be, the Lord's sweet pity with her go. The outward wayward life we see, the hidden springs we may not know. Nor is it given us to discern what threads the fatal sisters spun, through what ancestral years has run the sorrow with the woman born, what forged her cruel chain of moods, what set her feet in solitudes, and held the love within her mute, what mingled madness in the blood, a lifelong discord and annoy, water of tears with oil of joy, and hid within the folded bud perversities of flower and fruit. It is not ours to separate the tangled skein of will and fate, to show what metes and bounds should stand upon the soul's debatable land, and between choice and providence divide the circle of events. But he who knows our frame is just, merciful and compassionate, and full of sweet assurances and hope, for all the language is, that he remembereth we are dust. At last the great logs, crumbling low, sent out a dull and duller glow. The bullseye watch that hung in view, ticking its weary circuit through, pointed with mutely warning sign its black hand to the hour of 9. That sign the pleasant circle broke. My uncle ceased his pipe to smoke, knocked from its bowl the refuse gray, and laid it tenderly away, then roused himself to safely cover the dull red brands with ashes over. And while, with care, our mother laid the work aside, her steps she stayed, one moment, seeking to express her grateful sense of happiness for food and shelter, warmth and health, and love's contentment more than wealth, with simple wishes, not the weak, vain prayers which no fulfillment seek, but such as warm the generous heart, or prompt to do with heaven its part, that none might lack that bitter night, for bread and clothing, warmth and light. Within our beds a while we heard the wind that round the gables roared, with now and then a ruder shock, which made our very bedsteads rock. We heard the loosened clapboards toast, the board nails snapping in the frost, and on us, through the unplastered wall, felt the light sifted snowflakes fall, but sleep stole on, as sleep will do when hearts are light and life is new. Faint and more faint the murmurs grew, till in the summer land of dreams they softened to the sound of streams, low stir of leaves, and dip of oars, and lapsing waves on quiet shores. Next morn we wakened with a shout of merry voices high and clear, and saw the teamsters drawing near to break the drifted highways out. Down the long hillside treading slow we saw the half-buried oxen go, shaking the snow from heads uptoast, their straining nostrils white with frost. Before our door the straggling train drew up, an added team to gain. The elders threshed their hands a cold past, with the cider mug their jokes from lip to lip. The younger folks down the loose snowbanks wrestling rolled, then toiled again the cavalcade o'er windy hill, through clogged ravine, and woodland paths that wound between low drooping pine boughs winter wade. From every barn a team afoot, at every house a new recruit, where Drawn by nature's subtlest law, happily the watchful young men saw sweet doorway pictures of the curls and curious eyes of merry girls, lifting their hands in mock defense against the snowball's compliments, and reading in each missive, toast the charm with Eden never lost.
We heard once more the sleigh bells sound, and, following where the teamsters led, the wise old doctor went his round, just pausing at our door to say, in the brief autocratic way of one who, prompt at duty's call, was free to urge her claim on all, that some poor neighbor sick abed at night our mother's aid would need.
For, one in generous thought indeed, what mattered in the sufferer's sight the Quaker matron's inward light, the doctor's mail of Calvin's creed? All hearts confess the saints elect who, twain in faith, in love agree, and melt not in an acid sect the Christian pearl of charity.
So days went on, a week had passed since the great world was heard from last.
The almanac we studied, or read and reread our little store of books and pamphlets, scarce a score, one harmless novel, mostly hid from younger eyes, oh forbid, and poetry, or good or bad, a single book was all we had, where Elwood's meek, drab-skirted muse, a stranger to the heathen nine, sang, with a somewhat nasal whine, the wars of David and the Jews. At last the floundering carrier bore the village paper to our door. Lo, broadening outward as we read, to warmer zones the horizon spread in panoramic length unrolled we saw the marvels that it told. Before us passed the painted creeks, and daft McGregor on his raids in Costa Rica's Everglades.
And up Cheeto's winding slow road Ypsilanti's Maynooth Greeks, a Turk's head at each saddle bow. Welcome to us its week cold news, its corner for the rustic muse, its monthly gauge of snow and rain, its record, mingling in a breath the wedding bell and dirge of death, jest, anecdote, and lovelorn tale, the latest culprit sent to jail, its hue and cry of stolen and lost, its vendue sales and goods at cost, and traffic calling loud for gain.
We felt the stir of hall and street, the pulse of life that round us beat. The chill embargo of the snow was melted in the genial glow. Wide swung again our ice-locked door, and all the world was ours once more. Clasped angel of the backward look and folded wings of ashen gray and voice of echoes far away, the brazen covers of thy book, the weird palimpsest old and vast, wherein thou hitst the spectral past, where, closely mingling, pale and glow the characters of joy and woe, the monographs of outlived years, or smile illumed or dim with tears, green hills of life that slope to death, and haunts of home, whose vistaed trees shade off to mournful cypresses with the white amaranths underneath.
Even while I look, I can but heed the restless sand's incessant fall, importunate hours that hours succeed, each clamorous with its own sharp need, and duty keeping pace with all. Shut down and clasped with heavy lids, I hear again the voice that bids the dreamer leave his dream midway for larger hopes and graver fears. Life greatens in these later years, the century's aloe flowers today.
Yet haply in some lull of life, some truce of God which breaks its strife, the worldling's eyes shall gather dew, dreaming in throngful city ways of winter joys his boyhood knew, and dear and early friends. The few who yet remain, shall pause to view these Flemish pictures of old days, sit with me by the homestead hearth, and stretch the hands of memory forth to warm them at the wood fire's blaze. And thanks untraced to lips unknown shall greet me like the odors blown from unseen meadows newly mown, or lilies floating in some pond, wood fringed, the wayside gaze beyond. The traveler owns the grateful sense of sweetness near, he knows not whence, and pausing, takes with forehead bare the benediction of the air.
Number 63. When I consider how my light is spent.
By John Milton. When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide, doth God exact day labor, light denied? I fondly ask, but patience, to prevent that murmur, soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke they serve him best. His state is kingly thousands at his bidding speed, and post o'er land and ocean without rest, they also serve who only stand and wait.
Number 62.
Love's Philosophy. By Percy Bysshe Shelley. The fountains mingle with the river and the rivers with the ocean. The winds of heaven mix forever with a sweet emotion. Nothing in the world is single. All things by a law divine in one spirit meet and mingle. Why not I with thine? See the mountains kiss high heaven and the waves clasp one another. No sister flower would be forgiven if it disdained its brother. And the sunlight clasps the earth and the moonbeams kiss the sea. What is all this sweet work worth if thou kiss not me?
Number 61.
Birches. By Robert Frost. When I see birches bend to left and right across the lines of straighter darker trees, I like to think some boy's been swinging them. But swinging doesn't bend them down to stay. Ice storms do that. Often you must have seen them loaded with ice a sunny winter morning after a rain. They click upon themselves as the breeze rises, and turn many-colored as the stir cracks and crazes their enamel. Soon the sun's warmth makes them shed crystal shells shattering and avalanching on the snow crust. Such heaps of broken glass to sweep away you'd think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the load, and they seem not to break, though once they are bowed so low for long, they never right themselves. You may see their trunks arching in the woods years afterwards, trailing their leaves on the ground like girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. But I was going to say, when truth broke in with all her matter-of-fact about the ice storm, now am I free to be poetical?
I should prefer to have some boy bend them as he went out and in to fetch the cows, some boy too far from town to learn baseball, whose only play was what he found himself, summer or winter, and could play alone. One by one he subdued his father's trees by riding them down over and over again until he took the stiffness out of them, and not one but hung limp, not one was left for him to conquer. He learned all there was to learn about not launching out too soon and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. He always kept his poise to the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pains he used to fill a cup up to the brim, and even above the brim. Then he flung outward, feet first, with a swish, kicking his way down through the air to the ground. So was I once myself a swinger of birches. And so I dream of going back to be. It's when I'm weary of considerations, and life is too much like a pathless wood where your face burns and tickles with the cobwebs broken across it, and one eye is weeping from a twig's having lashed across it open. I'd like to get away from earth a while and then come back to it and begin over. May no fate willfully misunderstand me and half grant what I wish and snatch me away not to return. Earth's the right place for love, I don't know where it's likely to go better. I like to go by climbing a birch tree, and climb black branches up a snow-white trunk toward heaven, till the tree could bear no more, but dipped its top and set me down again. That would be good both going and coming back. One could do worse than be a swinger at birches. This was part 4 with the positions from 70 to 61 of our top 100 best poems of English literature.
If you liked our selection, and want to develop your intellectual skills, or just to relax, please subscribe to our channel, youtube.com/AIReaders, and follow us to listen quality poems written by the most famous poets of English literature and read by the most advanced artificial intelligence software. Thank you.